While romantic relationships are one of the best things in life, they can also be one of the most hurtful. Imagine investing your time, energy, and feelings into someone only to find out they have betrayed you with another person. Ouch! Cheaters often think they can get away with it, but the truth usually comes one way or another. Here are some weird ways people discovered their partner was cheating on them. This content has been edited for clarity. I had been suspicious of my wife cheating but had no proof. I once found a digital video camera and lingerie in a travel bag and confronted her about it. She said she was planning something for me, but that was really of character for her. Let's just say I would have been surprised to find out she was planning on filming a tape of us as our intimate life was dead. She'd also been out of town several times to visit friends. However, there was no SD card in the digital camera to confirm my suspicions. I confronted her a few other times for suspicious behavior, but she always denied it, and I had no proof. One night, our dog woke me up at 4 in the morning to take her outside to potty. When I came back inside, I saw my wife's purse sitting on the washer. For some reason, I walked over to look inside of it. I opened a zipper pocket and found a container with an SD card in it. At that moment, I had a feeling about what I had found but wanted to investigate in order to be sure. I put the SD card in my laptop, and sure enough, there were 20 different videos of her in bed with someone else. Each file was titled with the date and time that coincided with her visits out of town. I went through them all to see if she was with the same guy every time. I didn't watch them through, of course. I just a few seconds to confirm who was in it. I knew there would be an argument, and I wanted to be prepared with facts. I was relieved to finally have proof, but at the same time completely heartbroken. I felt so betrayed and cried thinking about all the years we spent together going down the drain. It was a roller coaster to say the least. The very last time we talked was about 6 months after the divorce was finalized. She wanted me to gift the vehicle she got in the divorce to her. None of her requests made any sense as she had already gotten it. Turned out she never tagged the vehicle in the state she was residing in and got a ticket for it. I just kind of laughed and said I had no idea what the issue was. She just needed to take the divorce decree and title and get it taken care of. I just kept laughing and she finally got off the phone. As for what happened to her, I honestly don't know. I blocked her on the only social media I had at the time and never unblocked her. I've never looked her up or even wanted to look her up. She moved in the middle of the divorce and I rarely visit that part of the US, so the odds of running into her are small. I rarely visit the small town we are both from, so the chances of running into her there are next to zero as well. My husband was supposed to be on a camping/hunting trip with his friends for a long weekend. I had just gotten off the phone with him telling me all about what they'd been doing, all this boring guy stuff that made me none the wiser. But maybe my subconscious was telling me something because I checked our joint bank account right after I got off the phone. It showed he had made 2 transactions that evening at a movie theater and an ice cream shop. Pretty stereotypical cheesy date. When I confronted him, he was backed into a corner, but he told me he was out with one of his guy friends. Obviously, it all fell apart pretty quickly as he was supposed to be in the woods camping and hadn't mentioned his bro movie date and all the intricate details of his trip he had told me on the phone. I was more shocked at the lengths of the lies he told about his fake trip. The dumb part was that he paid for the date with a bank card from a shared account we had together for 5 years. Sloppy. You'd think he wanted me to find out, but I don't think he did, judging from all the crying and apologies. He knew if he wanted to leave the relationship, he could have just told me, as I'm not the type to freak out. I would have just told him to get his stuff, and our entire life together would be over just like that. Which is exactly what ended up happening. I started having STD symptoms and decided to go to the doctor to get tested. It was the 2nd or 3rd time I had symptoms after sleeping with my boyfriend at the time. I wanted him to come with me to get the results, so he drove me. Each time it happened, my boyfriend blamed me for passing it to him. The doctor who gave me my results was already slightly angry at him because she was convinced it was coming from him, and he was lying. After she told me I had something again, he tried to blame it on me. Out of nowhere, my doctor reached over the desk and smacked him with my file a few times and told him to stop lying. I had never seen a doctor do that before. She was instrumental in our breaking up. She didn't let him blame me, and eventually, he admitted it may be coming from him. It turned out he was sleeping around with anyone who was willing. I never knew because I was way too trusting, and he was a really good liar. I was naive enough to think maybe I did have something first, and it never cleared even though I got tested before him and was fine. It also didn't help we lived an hour apart for a lot of the relationship. I know it was crazy unprofessional of my doctor, but it's something I will always remember. I don't think anyone had ever called him out before. I'm sure he never imagined a world where a doctor would beat him over the head with a file while calling him a liar. She was who I went to for testing for a long time after that. I trusted her to give it to me straight. Even when I moved pretty far, I made the drive to see her. This happened back around 2002, at the height of AIM. My mom was having a conversation with her best friend about the affair she was having with her boss at work. She even went into pretty graphic detail. When she was done with the conversation, she turned the computer off. No biggie, right? Only she turned the monitor off, not the actual computer. Naturally, my dad was the next to use it, and what did he find when he turned on the monitor? The entire conversation and its history. For the cherry on top, my dad printed the entire conversation on paper and confronted my mom one night, thinking my brother and I were upstairs. I was 16 and he was 12. My brother was in his room coloring, but I was in the downstairs bathroom, 15 feet away from the conversation being had. I was being forced to eavesdrop on the complete destruction of my parents' entire lives. I was frozen between saying I'm in the bathroom or staying silent with the knowledge of my mother's intimate exploits. I chose the second option, creating emotional scars that would affect me well into my 30s and won't tell a human soul about it until my deathbed. Yada yada yada. My dad married his friend from high school whom he met randomly, and my mom, well, she's doing her best. My wife was coming back from a business trip and said she was stopping at her parents' house for the weekend. I wasn't expecting her to be back until Sunday at the earliest. On Friday afternoon, I found a bottle cap on the stairs of our house. I was really confused because I never drank upstairs and hadn't had a drink all week. It seemed like she had been home at some point while I was at work. I called her and didn't get an answer, which wasn't unusual as she often had signal problems out in the middle of nowhere where the plant she had to visit was. I thought I would maybe check in with her mom just in case. Her mom was initially confused and then started to waffle, not knowing how best to cover for her own daughter. I got off the phone and after a couple of minutes my wife finally called. I point blank asked her who she was with and it was all downhill from there. They must have actually stopped at the house to pack for a little weekend getaway. Who knows what they did there while I was at work, but they obviously had a couple of drinks to get the weekend started early. I dated a girl a few years in college and grad school. It was a long-distance thing, but we were madly in love through most of it. One day, she randomly started telling me about this really cool guy she met. Apparently, they had a lot of similar interests, and he was really funny. I was genuinely happy for her because she used to complain about how she wanted me to be more ethnic. Started uploading pictures to social media, and he was constantly in them with her. I wanted to be a supportive boyfriend as we had talked about marriage and wanted to show her I trusted her. Therefore, I didn't really complain about all the time they were spending together. It was only in group settings anyways. I remember we had gotten into an argument about something totally unrelated. We hung up the phone that night upset. The next day she called me and wanted to talk more about it. We had a lengthy discussion, we both were kinda dug in, but then she told me she spoke to him about it and he agreed with her. I got mad, but I kept it to myself as I have a problem with opening up about my feelings. Whatever, we agreed to disagree and move on. I noticed a trend where we were arguing more and he would always side with her. In my head, I thought this dude was being an absolute snake, but to her, I would just constantly agree to disagree or blindly apologize for making her feel bad. At the end of the semester, she was going back home for the summer, and so was he. She told me how much she was going to miss him, and I just couldn't take it anymore. I straight up asked if she had done anything more than friends with him. She stumbled over her words, but I pressed, and she told me she kissed him. I was ticked, but I pressed further. Sure enough, she told me she slept with him. I immediately hung up the phone and threw it against the wall. She called back over and over. We started communicating through text, but that was it. The love of my life, or so I thought, found someone else. She dated him for a few months, but he ended up going to another school closer to his hometown. They didn't keep the relationship going. But whatever, you live and learn. I've been married for a bit now and have 2 kids, but the scars are still there. My wife and I were on an anniversary/post-deployment trip to Vegas, and she was passed out wasted. Her phone kept blowing up, so I looked at it. I read a whole message chain that went way back to before I deployed. She had been talking to another guy the whole night we were out, saying how she wished she was there with him instead of me, and all kinds of stuff. I saw other messages with weird contact names and found like 7 dudes and 3 women she was banging. I found a couple she had partied with a bunch while I was gone, but she stopped hanging out with them right as I got home because they were getting divorced. Turned out they were getting divorced because she was their girlfriend/third wheel, but wouldn't stop sleeping with the husband behind the wife's back. It gets worse. I found out the Spartan race group she would travel with all over the country to Spartan races was basically a group hookup club. They would all travel and stay together. After races, they would party and everyone slept with everyone. When I confronted her about what I found, she told me it was my fault for abandoning my family when I was deployed. It was a dumb thing to say because we met on a previous deployment. She was military too. She knew exactly what I did on deployment and how busy I stayed.